Jesus Christ. The important point is that for the Antichrist, this is no contradiction, because his message as the Antichrist is that every man is Jesus Christ. Anti-Pope John Paul II Address, March 7, 1983. The gospel is a person. It is Jesus Christ. Anti-Pope John Paul II Homily, June 1, 1980. Not only is the gospel message addressed to man, but it is a great messianic message about man. It is the revelation to man of the complete truth about himself. Anti-Pope John Paul II Redemptoris Missio, number 13. Jesus himself is the good news. He proclaims the good news not just by what he says or does, but by what he is. Anti-Pope John Paul II Homily, June 4, 1997. The gospel, by proclaiming the good news of Jesus, announces also the good news of man. Anti-Pope John Paul II on Christ Lay Faithful, number 7, December 30, 1988. Jesus Christ himself is the good news. Anti-Pope John Paul II Homily, May 9, 1988. The gospel is the revelation of God, and it is also the revelation of the truth about man, about his dignity. We call it good news or good tidings. Anti-Pope John Paul II is preaching to the world that man and Jesus are one and the same, and that the gospel is the truth about Jesus, and it is also the truth about each man. The next quotation, in fact, is particularly revealing. Anti-Pope John Paul II Address to members of U.S. Congress, January 8, 2001. I have invited all to turn to Jesus in order to discover in new and deeper ways the truth of man. To see the truth of Christ is to experience with deep amazement the worth and dignity of every human being, which is the good news of the gospel. First of all, notice the reference to Redemptor Hominis 10 that Anti-Pope John Paul II makes. Redemptor Hominis 10 is where the Antichrist originally defined the gospel and Christianity as the deep amazement at man. Secondly, just before giving that reference, Anti-Pope John Paul II says that to see the truth of Christ is to experience with deep amazement the worth and dignity of every human being. In other words, to see the truth of Christ is to experience every man according to Anti-Pope John Paul II. And this is the good news of the gospel. This means that every man